Trump will be sworn in. You're watching the former President George Bush and his wife just getting onto the platform.
Now, after the ceremony, the president will view the inauguration parade and in the evening attend several inauguration balls. Former presidents, like we mentioned just now, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter are in attendance today, as well as Donald Trump's Democrat opponent in the election, Hillary Clinton. Now, against all the odds and the predictions of most pundits, Mr. Donald Trump will become the 45th President of the United States on Friday. So how did he get here and what kind of president will he be? Well, Kate Fisher tells us.
June 2015, and Donald Trump stands in one of his New York skyscrapers to announce his run for president.
And we are going to make our country great again.
A little over a year later, he accepted the Republican presidential nomination. But that didn't stop the controversy.
I will build a great wall on our southern border, and I will have Mexico pay for that wall.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
You got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember. Oh, maybe that's what I said.
I moved on her, actually. You know, she was down in Palm Beach. I moved on her, and I failed. I'll admit it.
Whoa.
I did try and her. She was married.
So how did a man who apparently offended so many people win a presidential election?
The rules didn't apply to him because he had a career as a reality television show host and a celebrity. It just didn't seem out of the ordinary for him to behave this way. And I think the mistake that we made as journalists and analysts was thinking that the American people would delineate the difference between the behavior necessary for being a celebrity and the behavior necessary for being President of the United States.
Others believe his message resonated with many Americans who felt disillusioned in a globalized economy.
The election of Donald Trump is really a reflection of the feelings of many Americans, mostly in rural areas, that feel disconnected from where the U.S. economy was heading and had not necessarily seen opportunity coming their way.
It's impossible to predict what...
And we'll have to interrupt that broadcast because we're now going to live pictures at Capitol Hill, where we are seeing the arrival of the current president, President Barack Obama, and he's met President-elect Donald Trump right now, and they are just going through the formalities before the inauguration ceremony.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Are you going to reverse the immigration order in the next few days?
Congratulations, sir.
That's right. Thank you.
Okay, Laura, we're moving.
And we have with us in the studio Harry Sahi's research analyst with the US program at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at Nanyang Technological University here in Singapore. Harry, welcome to the studios.
Sure, happy to be here.
So on this very, historic day, really, Harry, what are your feelings about Donald Trump now?
I mean, he is a candidate who defied all odds. Whatever the mainstream media has said, whatever pundits have said, policy wonks have said, he has taken that unlikely route that nobody has expected. So this is one of those moments where history is being written as we speak. And I'd be surprised to find if anyone can really predict what the next few months, the next few years will look like.
But it's really come, at a very, through a very controversial path, though, hasn't it, Harry? So, the rest of the world, we've all got our eyes on this. How do you think countries in Asia specifically are going to be feeling as we wait for this inauguration?
I would expect a lot of feeling of unease, discomfort. Countries in this region, they thrive on predictability and stability. They do not want an X factor leading one of the most powerful countries in the world, if not the most powerful. And it will be a time of a lot of waiting, I think, and not a comfortable time either.
Right.
I'm going to ask you to predict what's going to happen in just the next couple of hours when Mr. Trump gives his inaugural speech. What are some of the themes, key themes that you think he's going to touch on?
So far, we've seen President-elect Trump tap into a very visceral kind of feeling with the American people. So I would expect him, it's worked for him thus far, so I would expect him to continue on with that talk of making America great again, protectionism, end of free trade, making better deals, things of that nature.
Right.
All right, well, we're just going to go right now to the United States, and we're going to be joined by our bureau chief there, Simon Marks. He is in Washington right now. Simon.
Well, Dawn, as you can tell, the pageantry is absolutely well and truly underway up there on Capitol Hill. We've just seen members of Donald Trump's family, his children arriving for this ceremony, which is going to play out over the course of the next hour or so. Culminating, of course, with Donald Trump's inaugural address, his opportunity to speak directly to the American people and to the international audience about the issues that he wants to be front of mind as he moves into the White House and succeeds Barack Obama in the Oval Office for the very first time. That will be preceded by his formal inauguration, which we think is going to happen in roughly 40 minutes from now. The swearing-in Chief Justice of the United States, John Roberts, administering the oath of office to Donald Trump. The oath of office will be sworn by Donald Trump on two Bibles, one of them a Trump family Bible, the other a Bible that was used by Abraham Lincoln and, in fact, used by Barack Obama during his inauguration in 2012. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, as you've seen already, among those up on Capitol Hill for this inauguration. Clearly a difficult day for Hillary Clinton, but Barack Obama and Democratic Party leaders have been at pains to underscore that what we are all witnessing here is essentially the hallmark of American democracy, the peaceful transition of power. 8 years of Barack Obama's government coming to an end, at least 4 years of Donald Trump in office about to begin. Implausible as that may have seemed 15, 18 months ago. Perhaps in many ways Donald Trump and Ivanka Trump 15 or 18 months ago could never have imagined that they would be up on Capitol Hill for this swearing-in ceremony today. And that's one of the reasons, of course, why this has got to be an excessively difficult moment for Hillary Clinton and for her husband, former President Bill Clinton. Not all Democrats, it has to be said, are being as magnanimous about this swearing-in ceremony as Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton. At least 60 members of the House of Representatives, all of them Democrats, have decided to boycott this inauguration. That is an unprecedented display of defiance towards an incoming president, Donald Trump, currently the president-elect, about to become president of the United States. The boycott was sparked by a social media row between Donald Trump and an icon of the civil rights movement here, Congressman John Lewis, which began with Congressman Lewis saying that he did not believe that Donald Trump was going to be a legitimate president. That's something that didn't sit well with Donald Trump and didn't sit well with many of his supporters. And there are thousands of Donald Trump's supporters here in Washington, D.C. for this swearing-in. People have flown in from all over the country. These are the people who fueled Donald Trump's rise to government. They are people that he says he owes everything to. He said last night during that concert at the Lincoln Memorial, "I'm just the messenger. I was here really to deliver on your desire for substantial change." And as a result of his victory, so many of those people who fueled his victory and propelled him into government have decided to come here to Washington, D.C., even in the rain that's lightly coating Capitol Hill, to observe this transition of power and to celebrate it. Equally, there are many people on the streets here in Washington who are not celebrating this transition of power. There are protests taking place along the parade route that Donald Trump will head down once this inauguration ceremony is finished, and large protests planned here in 24 hours' time. We'll be witnessing a very different tableau here in Washington, D.C. when Saturday dawns. The so-called Million Women March will be snaking its way through the city. But today, it's Donald Trump's day, and it's going to begin shortly up there on Capitol Hill.
All right, thanks very much, Simon. We'll be coming back to you as and when the program allows. Simon Marks from Washington, D.C. Now, reports coming out of Washington say clashes have erupted between police and protesters. In fact, local witnesses say the protesters smashed the windows of a Bank of America branch in the capital. It's not clear who the protesters are, but about 30 groups of some 270,000 people have permits to hold demonstrations. They include those for and against President-elect Trump. We will bring you more updates on that situation as we get them.
All right, Harry, we just saw there some live pictures of everyone very quickly taking their seats. The family of Donald Trump, specifically his children, we saw some pictures of them up there on the stage. Trump has said his sons are going to play a big role in now managing the Trump organization, that he's going to keep himself apart from it. I mean, that was a very big thing coming up into the election and, you know, into the election season. What do you make of that distinction that he has put, you know, saying he won't have anything to do with his businesses? Will people feel reassured by that?
I think it would be very difficult to say that people are reassured. There have been already experts on ethics and governance who have said that what Trump has done thus far is not enough to guarantee that there won't be any conflicts of interest. It's very difficult to make sure that he would even adhere to the sort of lax rules that he's imposed on himself. So I think it's not altogether convincing.
All right, but nonetheless, you know, in terms of those conflicts of interest, I mean, there's been speculation, so much talk leading up to Inauguration Day about possible impeachment, you know, even. Is it just too early to talk about, you know, situations like that?
Absolutely. But as I've said before, we are in an unprecedented period where it will be difficult to predict what will come next. I wouldn't be altogether surprised if we see something as crazy as impeachment within the next couple of years. It really is just too difficult to tell.
Right. This really is an unprecedented, you know, situation for the U.S. and actually for the rest of the world as well, to be, you know, to have this level of, you know, dis-ease, as it were, because, you know, that bridges into something that's close to our hearts in this part of the world. Trade, tariffs, those are things that Trump has spoken very tough on. At least, you know, many thought it was rhetoric to begin with. Is it just rhetoric?
I think a part of it did come from a place of truth, where Donald Trump, according to his reality, he really did see that America was losing out on these kind of free trade deals. To him, it really was something that was bringing the country down. And though he may have used it as a vehicle of rhetoric, I do think this might come from a place of truth for him.
All right, Harry, we'll have to stop you there. We'll come back to you at a later time. But we do hear that President-elect Donald Trump and his Vice President-elect Mike Pence will be going on the podium very soon. In the meantime, though, we have with us Tina Datta. She is the Singapore Country Director of Republicans Overseas, and she's joining us right now from Washington, D.C. as well.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody.
So, Tina, welcome, Tina. I mean, a big day for you and for all of America, really. I mean, what kind of presidency do you anticipate Donald Trump to take from here on?
Well, one of the things I think that's really important also to mention when we were talking about, what you guys were talking about earlier, is that 33 states also voted
We do apologize for the audio problems that we're having there with Tina. We will check back in with Tina in just a while, but let's take you back to some live pictures now from Washington, D.C. We're watching the pictures of the First Lady, Michelle Obama, just ascending the stairs there with Joe Biden's wife is coming down those stairs as well, headed towards
Now, we do know, of course, that Michelle Obama and Dr. Jill Biden are very close friends. In fact, they hosted their final event together on Monday for military families, and it was there that Dr. Jill Biden called Michelle Obama family.
If you're just joining us, we're looking at live pictures now from Washington, D.C., where the stage is very quickly filling with guests for today's inauguration ceremony, where Donald Trump will be sworn in as America's 45th president.
The First Lady, Mrs. Michelle Obama, and the wife of the Vice President, Dr. Jill Biden, escorted by the Democratic Staff Director of the United States Senate Committee on Rules and Administration, Kelly Fado, Ms. Irish Weinschall, and Mr. Paul Pelosi.
You're watching live pictures there from Washington, D.C. Michelle Obama and Jill Biden just being shown to their seats. You can see there, right behind them there, former President Bill Clinton and, of course, Hillary Clinton, who fought a long and hard campaign as the Democratic candidate against Donald Trump, conceding defeat to him on November the 8th just last year.
I do believe we're about to see the arrival of Mrs. Trump and Mrs. Pence, who will soon be announced onto the platform. In fact, you see them there now. Mrs. Melania Trump in a blue outfit today. There's some background detail on Mrs. Karen Pence. She's been a teacher for 25 years. She and Mr. Mike Pence have been together for the last 31 years. In fact, they met in church.
right, so pictures there of Mrs. Melania Trump. They're just arriving for today's inauguration ceremony. Of course, today's inauguration ceremony will be taking place at the west front of the Capitol building.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Melania Trump and Mrs. Karen Pence, escorted by the Secretary of the Senate, Julie Adams, the Clerk of the House of Representatives, Karen Haas, Mrs. Abigail Blunt, Mrs. Jana Ryan, the Honorable Elaine L. Chao, and Mrs. Judy McCarthy.
Live pictures there now of President Barack Obama. You just saw some pictures there of President Barack Obama arriving with Joe Biden. We're going to go back now to Washington, D.C., where Simon Marks is standing by. Simon, give us a sense of what to expect today.
Well, you're getting a lot of sense of the colour of this ceremony at dawn as these images continue to come in. Joe Biden and Barack Obama now preparing to walk down those stairs and exit out onto the portico where this swearing-in ceremony of Barack Obama's successor, Donald Trump, is going to take place. Melania Trump, there was a very touching moment earlier today when Donald Trump and Melania Trump first went to the White House and they were met by Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. And Melania Trump came bearing a gift in a break with tradition, and clearly the Obamas weren't expecting it. It was a box. It looked like it was one of those Tiffany boxes from the jewelers, and she presented this gift to Michelle Obama, and Michelle Obama seemed a little nonplussed as to precisely what to do with it, because they had to go and take formal photographs as soon as the Trumps had arrived. So Barack Obama ended up carrying the box back into the White House and handing it off to an aide, and then returning to the front steps for the formal picture taking. But you can see now Melania Trump and the Trump's son, Barron Trump. Remember that Barron Trump and his mother Melania will not be moving into the White House, at least not immediately. They will be staying in New York City. Barron Trump enrolled in school in New York City and at least completing this academic year, which runs through until the end of the summer. You also mentioned Mike Pence's wife, Karen. It's an interesting piece of coincidence, but there's some continuity in the fact that she is an educator because, of course, Joe Biden's wife, the current vice president's wife, is also an educator and has made a little bit of history by being the first second lady of the United States to continue working and continue enjoying her professional life throughout her husband's time as vice president of the United States.
Charles E. Schumer and House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi.
Simon, we're currently seeing current President Barack Obama and VP Joe Biden walking down the aisle right now. He is just arriving on Capitol Hill to quite a warm round of applause.
have had. And for Joe Biden, this really summates a political career. He has expressed regret for his decision not to seek the presidency last year. Indeed, in an interview with the New York Times that's being published this Sunday, he is described by the reporter who wrote the article as afflicted with regret over that decision. He's hinted at a possible presidential run in 4 years' time, but by that point he will be in his late 70s, and very few analysts here in Washington believe that he's got another presidential run in him. Barack Obama has made it clear that he's going to break with convention. Convention here dictates that after this inauguration is over, the former president of the United States, in this case Barack Obama, exchanging pleasantries and a laugh there with his predecessor, George W. Bush, convention dictates that Barack Obama shouldn't say very much and should give Donald Trump the opportunity to govern without a running commentary. Barack Obama made it very clear during his closing news conference that if he comes to the conclusion that Donald Trump is threatening what he referred to as core American values, and he defined them: freedom of the press, voting rights, the mass roundup of kids, as he put it, mass deportations of immigrants living illegally in the United States, he made it very clear that he will not hesitate to speak out. So we could be in for some interesting times. Barack Obama there greeting Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court Justice, who will be administering the oath to Mike Pence as Vice President, and of course Chief Justice John Roberts will then administer the oath of office to Donald Trump a few moments later. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, at this very moment, Paul Ryan, he is the most powerful elected Republican.
Simon, we'll just interrupt you right there because we're seeing pictures now of US President-elect Donald Trump arriving at Capitol Hill. In front of him, Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, just ahead of him as they descend the steps towards the platform where the inauguration ceremony will officially take place.
So Donald Trump now making his way down the stairs that Barack Obama just walked down, and right in front of him you can see there Paul Ryan. I was just saying that at this very moment Paul Ryan remains the most powerful elected Republican in office. He's the Speaker of the House of Representatives and obviously will be working very closely with Donald Trump as he puts his administration together and starts governing. But as soon as Donald Trump takes that oath of office, he becomes the most powerful elected Republican in office. A nice glance for the camera there and a hello from Donald Trump. Looks pretty relaxed given the gravity of the ceremony that he is about to participate in and the gravity of the change in life that he is about to experience. It sort of started yesterday when he flew into Washington. He no longer has access to his private corporate jet. He's had to give that up. And the next time he boards a plane, whether he flies back to New York or heads off anywhere else, it will be a military jet, and it will, of course, have the call sign Air Force One. And there's Mike Pence now also arriving for the swearing in because he has to take the oath of office to be the next Vice President of the United States. So he's arriving on the platform with Donald Trump not very far behind him, greeting those who are up there on the platform and heading towards the position where very soon he will be sworn into office by Justice Clarence Thomas of the Supreme Court. The rest of the day, of course, we'll see a banquet up on Capitol Hill that will be attended by Donald Trump and Mike Pence and members of Congress, both Senate and the House of Representatives. And then the big parade. Donald Trump will parade his way down Pennsylvania Avenue, down Constitution Avenue and then Pennsylvania Avenue as he makes his way to the White House for the first time as Secretary of State. We don't think that's going to start until about 4 o'clock in the morning, Singapore, Hong Kong time. So if you are planning to sleep, by the time you wake up, you'll be able to see pictures of Donald Trump arriving at the White House for the first time. In terms of the business of government that's going to get done, we're told that a handful of executive orders will be signed today by Donald Trump, including one that formally kills America's participation in the so-called Trans-Pacific Partnership, that Pan-Asian free trade agreement with the United States that Barack Obama had very much hoped he would finish negotiating and would manage to implement by the time he left the Oval Office for the last time. Well, he left the Oval Office for the last time just about an hour ago, and of course we now know that TPP was dashed on the rocks of last year's presidential election, and Donald Trump will formally kill it off by signing that executive order in a few hours' time. More members of Congress arriving, including Mitch McConnell, the Republicans' leader in the US Senate, and Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Nancy Pelosi, of course, the Democrats' leader in the House of Representatives, and she will continue to play a substantial role as a prominent opposition voice here in Washington, D.C. Over the next 4 years. Now to swearing-in ceremonies, the formal
the
swearing-in
President-elect
ceremonies.
of the United States,
some
Donald John Trump.
Takes place before that.
Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman of the Joint Congressional Committee for Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Roy Blunt.
Thank you all. If you have a seat, you can sit down. Mr. President.
We're going to cut and go for a short break right now, but do join us again for our special coverage of the U.S. presidential inauguration.
Of the 45th President of the United States of America.
Take my hand, tiptoe a little closer. Tell me you love me.
Coming up on the next Asia Business First, we kick off a special property series that looks at how Chinese money is shaking up the housing markets across the world. And after Trump's inauguration, what's next? We'll have the latest ahead on Asia Business First.
I'm Michio Ishida in Japan. You're watching Channel News Asia. this Saturday. They run a hedge fund together. Does being husband and wife help them make better investment decisions?
I think it actually helps because I can read him like a book.
That you're a team with a common goal.
And has India's demonetization move backfired?
Very bold, audacious, unprecedented, historic thing.
Plus, the high cost of being shackled by household chores. Money Mind, Saturday, 10:30 p.m.
Money Mind is brought to you by Subaru. Symmetrical all-wheel drive.
Welcome back to our special coverage of U.S. Inauguration Day here on Channel News Asia, where we're bringing you live coverage from Washington, D.C. We're looking at live pictures right now.
Lincoln's second inaugural speech tried to find reason for the continued war when he pointed out that both sides prayed to the same God. He'd earlier written about those fervent prayers that one side must be and both sides may be wrong, but in 1865 he looked to the...
All right, we're just going to interrupt that live pictures and go to Tina Datta. She's Singapore Country Director of Republicans Overseas, and she's in Washington right as we speak. Tina, when Mr. Trump takes the oath of office as the 45th President of the United States in just a short while, he is going to enter the pages of U.S. history. What kind of president do you think he's going to be?
Well, one of the things he's definitely going to be is he's going to be looking at what he can do best for the American people. And while we, as Simon discussed, many of the things that the decisions may be made here might not necessarily, especially with regards to trade, be the message that our friends in Asia and our friends in Singapore would like to hear at the beginning. But what I do think is he needs to sort of get his feet wet. We need to give him about the first 100 days, which is what I've said in many times on this wonderful news station, to let's see how the policies that he's proclaimed are actually going to be implemented. While Simon is correct, they're probably going to, with an executive order, stop all negotiations with TPP. That doesn't mean that individual trade agreements with countries within the TPP zone will not be in existence. Singapore has a TPA that was negotiated with the United States last year. It's a strong trade agreement. There are international government agreements that have been put in place. So Singapore as itself is pretty well situated with regards to the relationship with the United States. And I just think that the United States wants to stand on its own grounds at this point, negotiating trade deals with countries in Asia and ASEAN, and we'll just have to see how it goes. We'll just have to see how it goes.
Lacking in comprehension of judgment.
I'm very excited, by the way, if you're asking me. I'm very excited about what's going on. Well, they're praying at the moment, so I think maybe we might want to... This is Tim Lee Dolan,
lacking, we count for
Cardinal
nothing.
From New York.
Now with you is wisdom, who knows your will and was there when you made the world, who understands what is pleasing in your eyes, what is conformable with your commands. Send her forth from your holy heavens, from your glorious throne dispatch her, that she may be with us and work with us, that we may grasp what is pleasing to you. For she knows and understands all things, and will guide us prudently in our affairs, and safeguard us by her glory. Amen.
From the Gospel of Matthew, the 5th chapter, God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for Him, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the earth. God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice.
Harry, we're just listening to Tina just now talking about the possible fate of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and the fact that the countries who had signed on should still be hopeful. She mentioned that all is not necessarily lost because Trump will probably pursue bilateral agreements with some of those countries, and we certainly already have a relationship with him here in Singapore trade-wise. But TPP was also supposed to be the economic dimension of this pivot to Asia. What's happened to that?
I think the pivot to Asia is now widely regarded as dead in the water, so to speak. Whatever momentum that President Obama has built up seemed to have stopped. TPP especially being one of the major economic pillars of that policy. There are obvious geopolitical implications along with economic ones for the TPP, so I personally do see it as a loss for the United States.
All right, but where do we go from here? Insofar as who fills the gap? I mean, speculation that China is going to come in here now, and basically, a communist country being a leader of free trade agreements. I mean, is that what we're seeing?
I think that's actually a very good way to put it, especially with the speech in Davos by President Xi Jinping. China is clearly in the driver's seat when it comes to free trade. It is no longer the United States championing that kind of policy. There is talk of Japan filling in that gap as well, but there are obvious historical difficulties with Japan playing that kind of a role. So we really are in uncharted territory here.
Now, if China were to take over this leadership of global free trade, where would that then leave the US? Is it going to be almost like a forgotten trade-wise?
That will likely not happen. The United States still is the largest economy. It is still a very innovative economy. It is an economy that is still experiencing growth. It is too large to ignore, so I don't think it will be sidelined by any means.
Let's bring Tina Data back in on the conversation here. Tina.
Yeah, Harry, listen, thank you, by the way, for saying that. I do agree with you that the United States still will be taking a very strong look at engaging in Asia. I don't think that the pivot to Asia is over. I just think that the level with which the excitement that TPP raised is going to have to be tapered down a little bit. In the negotiations with TPP, there were still some very hard issues that were not resolved. And so to say that the fact that TPP is off the table is going to change the focus from the United States off of Asia, I think that's what was said. That's not exactly true. China doesn't necessarily look at the TPP and the way that it was structured in the same way. And while China will be looking through its Belt and Road initiatives to be looking at investments and looking at trade, it's not the same type of governance levels that TPP was going to bring. And so there will be continued discussions on governance with the bilateral agreements, whether it's bilateral agreements with Malaysia having to do with coal and coal burning facilities, or just labor issues in Vietnam. Those discussions will continue, and the United States will continue to engage on bilateral agreements to raise those standards, which was the talking points of what TPP was, to raise those standards to bring labor and energy up to the right levels.
But after 8 long years of negotiation there, Tina, isn't there a little question of trust as well?
Well, I think that the negotiations, do you want me to say? Okay. I think that the negotiations on the trade agreements take years. 8 years is not a long time for a trade agreement. The original negotiations on the agreements with Korea, I think, took 12 years. NAFTA took almost 18 years. So 8 years was a speedy time.
All right, Tina, we're going to have to interrupt you right there because we're looking at live pictures right now of the Missouri State Choral, and they're performing a musical selection ahead of the U.S. presidential inauguration, which of course will bring in Donald Trump as president. We'll go for a short break now, but when we come back, more from the proceedings.
Take my hand, tiptoe a little closer. Tell me you love me.
the premiering episode of Bridging Giants. Stories of friendship between the people of Cambodia and China, built in the fields of agriculture and through the restoration of a sacred site, on Bridging Giants, Saturday at 9:30 p.m. on Channel News Asia.
Next on First Look Asia, Chinese New Year is as much about family as it is about food, but too much of a delicious thing can be harmful. We'll show you how to have your cookies and eat them all without hurting your health. And slightly more than a week away from the Year of the Rooster. Well before it crows, we'll be exploring Singapore's Chinatown to pick out what's in store for this year's celebrations. Plus, all the latest in the international, business and sports news. Start your week with us on First Look Asia, Monday.
Welcome back to our special coverage here on Channel News Asia of the U.S. Inauguration Day, where Donald J. Trump is soon to be sworn in as America's 45th president. We're watching live pictures right now from the Capitol, Washington, D.C., where the platform is pretty much filled with guests who've been invited for this special ceremony. Now, earlier, Donald Trump arrived to the platform, looking very relaxed, a smile for the cameras, a little kiss for Melania as well, and a pat on the shoulder from current president, the 44th president, Barack Obama, before taking his seat, awaiting the official ceremony to begin.
There are, of course, close to 900,000 people attending the inauguration in Washington, D.C. at Capitol Hill. You can see everybody really excited, and there's a festive flavor to the mood right now, and we do believe that the Vice President-elect Mike Pence will be called and be sworn in very soon by Associate Justice Clarence Thomas, who will administer the vice presidential oath.
While leaving too many behind. A fractured media, a politics frequently consumed by
This is
rancor.
currently Senator Chuck Schumer, who's about to introduce Associate Justice Clarence Thomas.
Such times, faith in our government, our institutions, and even our country can erode. Despite these challenges, I stand here today confident in this great country for one reason: you, the American people. We Americans have always been a forward-looking, problem-solving, optimistic, patriotic, and decent people. Whatever our race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, whether we are immigrant or native-born, whether we live with disabilities or do not, in wealth or in poverty, we are all exceptional in our commonly held yet fierce devotion to our country, and in our willingness to sacrifice our time, energy, and even our lives to making it a more perfect union. Today we celebrate one of democracy's core attributes, the peaceful transfer of power. And every day we stand up for core democratic principles enshrined in the Constitution: the rule of law, equal protection for all under law, the freedom of speech, press, religion, the things that make America, America. And we can gain strength from reading our history and listening to the voices of average Americans. They always save us in times of strife. One such American was Major Sullivan Ballou. On July 14, 1861, when the North and South were lining up for their first battle, a time when our country was bitterly divided and faith in the future of our country was at a nadir, Major Ballou of the 2nd Rhode Island Volunteers penned a letter to his wife, Sarah. It is one of the greatest letters in American history. It shows the strength and courage of the average American. Allow me to read some of his words
which echo through the ages. My very dear Sarah, he wrote, the indications are very strong that we shall move in a few days, perhaps tomorrow. If it is necessary that I should fall on the battlefield for my country.
Now, as we await the imminent swearing-in of Vice President-elect Mike Pence, we go now to Washington once more to join Simon Marks, who is going to tell us a bit more about the role of the elected vice presidency. Simon, let's start with talking about the sort of vice president you think Mike Pence is going to be heading into his inauguration.
Well, of course, Mike Pence is about to become the man who is a heartbeat away from the presidency. He's the man who will step in should at any point Donald Trump become incapacitated or should at any point he have to leave office. I mean, this is the number 2 position in the constitutional hierarchy here in the United States. Charles Schumer, the leader of the Democrats, wrapping up his remarks, and then we'll be seeing Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas swearing in Mike Pence, the former Indiana governor. He's been actually living temporarily just up the road from my house here in Washington, D.C. We've been hearing the motorcades passing back and forth day and night, but he'll shortly be leaving those temporary digs and moving in to the Naval Observatory, which is the vice president's official residence. Joe Biden and Jill Biden will shortly be moving out. Governor Pence, a hero among conservative Republicans. They are thrilled that he was the choice of Donald Trump to be his running mate. Donald Trump clearly had a number of possible running mates that he was mulling over, but there was that visit to Mike Pence's home in Indiana that sort of gave the game away shortly before the official announcement was made a few months ago. He is equally, Mike Pence, a lightning rod for critics, particularly for protesters who accuse him of having got behind moves that were designed to limit gay rights in Indiana. And there was a protest right outside that house where he's been staying temporarily just on Wednesday by gay rights protesters here in Washington, D.C. So Mike Pence poised to take the oath of office as Donald Trump's vice president, and we're now going to see that process begin with Charles Schumer introducing Clarence Thomas to administer the oath. Let's watch in.
Mr. Vice President-elect, would you raise your right hand and repeat after me? I, Michael Richard Pence, do solemnly swear.
I, Michael Richard Pence, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties of the office on which I'm about to enter.
The duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Vice President. God bless you.
And there you have it. U.S. Vice President Mike Pence officially sworn in on Capitol Hill. Looks like an emotional time for the former Indiana governor.
President Barack Obama there congratulating Mike Pence as he's sworn in as Vice President. Donald Trump also congratulating Mike Pence on his official swearing in as the new Vice President of the United States.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, accompanied by the President's own United States Marine Band.
And they just heard the announcement of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, which is about to perform Now We Belong. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir, of course, has sung at previous inaugurations. This will be its 6th in a row.
We're going to come back after a short break. Stay with us here on Channel News Asia for live coverage of today's inauguration of US President Donald Trump.
Take my hand, tiptoe a little closer. Tell me you love me.
We are going to make America greater, greater, greater than it's ever been before.
It's a presidential victory grounded on a promise.
He tapped into that frustration, anger.
A country divided on many issues.
Donald Trump looked into the eyes to the ISIS and he said that I'm going to fight.
As President Trump enters the Oval Office, will his promises to the American people translate into reality? Trump's America, Saturday at 11 p.m. exclusively on Channel News Asia.
There's a new way to connect with Channel News Asia. Read about what goes on behind the scenes of your favourite programmes. Take a peek into Channel News Asia events around the world. Explore the variety of programmes available for you. And share your thoughts instantly. There's only one place to go. Connect with Channel News Asia now.
Welcome back to Channel News Asia and our special coverage of the U.S. Inauguration Day in Washington, D.C., where Mike Pence has just newly been sworn in as Vice President. We're going to go back to Simon Marks, our U.S. Bureau Chief. Simon?
Dawn, we're sailing into some quite interesting constitutional waters here because the US Constitution says that the new president is supposed to be sworn in by high noon here in Washington, D.C. It is now exactly 11:59. So if Donald Trump doesn't take the oath of office within the next minute, theoretically, for a brief period, the United States will have been without a president for a very brief period. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir there wrapping up. The next thing that's supposed to happen is that Chief Justice John Roberts is to be introduced, which he is being introduced now. So let's see if they get it in the next 30 seconds. Will Donald Trump take the oath of office before midday? Who said his presidency wasn't going to be a page-turner?
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Donald Trump sworn in there as the 45th President of the United States of America.
We're now hearing the U.S. Marine Band perform Hail to the Chief, the presidential anthem, of course, accompanied by a 21-gun salute reserved for the President of the United States, former presidents, presidents-elects, and chiefs of state.
What a great honor to be able to introduce for the first time ever anywhere the 45th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Did I get that one right?
Chief Justice Roberts, President Carter, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, fellow Americans, and people of the world, thank you. We, the citizens of America, are now joined in a great national effort to rebuild our country and restore its promise for all of our people. Together, we will determine the course of America and the world for many, many years to come. We will face challenges. We will confront hardships, but we will get the job done. Every 4 years, we gather on these steps to carry out the orderly and peaceful transfer of power. And we are grateful to President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama for their gracious aid throughout this transition. They have been magnificent. Thank you. Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. Politicians prospered, but the jobs left and the factories closed. The establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. Their victories have not been your victories. Their triumphs have not been your triumphs. And while they celebrated in our nation's capital, there was little to celebrate for struggling families all across our land. That all changes starting right here and right now, because this moment is your moment. It belongs to you. It belongs to everyone gathered here today, and everyone watching all across America. This is your day. This is your celebration. And this, the United States of America, is your country. What truly matters is not which party controls our government, but whether our government is controlled by the people. January 20th, 2017 will be remembered as the day the people became the rulers of this nation again. The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. Everyone is listening to you now. You came by the tens of millions to become part of a historic movement, the likes of which the world has never seen before. At the center of this movement is a crucial conviction that a nation exists to serve its citizens. Americans want great schools for their children, safe neighborhoods for their families, and good jobs for themselves. These are just and reasonable demands of righteous people and a righteous public. But for too many of our citizens, a different reality exists. Mothers and children trapped in poverty in our inner cities, rusted out factories scattered like tombstones across the landscape of our nation, an education system flush with cash, but which leaves our young and beautiful students deprived of all knowledge, and the crime and the gangs and the drugs that have stolen too many lives and robbed our country of so much unrealized potential. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now. We are one nation, and their pain is our pain. Their dreams are our dreams, and their success will be our success. We share one heart, one home, and one glorious destiny. The oath of office I take today is an oath of allegiance to all Americans. For many decades, we've enriched foreign industry at the expense of American industry, subsidized the armies of other countries while allowing for the very sad depletion of our military. We've defended other nations' borders while refusing to defend our own. And spent trillions and trillions of dollars overseas while America's infrastructure has fallen into disrepair and decay. We've made other countries rich while the wealth, strength, and confidence of our country has dissipated over the horizon. One by one, the factories shuttered and left our shores, with not even a thought about the millions and millions of American workers that were left behind. The wealth of our middle class has been ripped from their homes and then redistributed all across the world. But that is the past, and now we are looking only to the future. We assembled here today are issuing a new decree to be heard in every city in every foreign capital and in every hall of power. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first. Every decision on trade, on taxes, on immigration, on foreign affairs will be made to benefit American workers and American families. We must protect our borders from the ravages of other countries making our products, stealing our companies, and destroying our jobs. Protection will lead to great prosperity and strength. I will fight for you with every breath in my body, and I will never, ever let you down. America will start winning again, winning like never before. We will bring back our jobs. We will bring back our borders. We will bring back our wealth. And we will bring back our dreams. We will build new roads and highways and bridges and airports and tunnels and railways all across our wonderful nation. We will get our people off of welfare and back to work, rebuilding our country with American hands and American labor. We will follow two simple rules: buy American and hire American. We will seek friendship and goodwill with the nations of the world, but we do so with the understanding that it is the right of all nations to put their own interests first. We do not seek to impose our way of life on anyone, but rather to let it shine as an example. We will shine for everyone to follow. We will reinforce old alliances and form new ones and unite the civilized world against radical Islamic terrorism, which we will eradicate completely from the face of the earth. At the bedrock of our politics will be a total allegiance to the United States of America. And through our loyalty to our country, we will rediscover our loyalty to each other. When you open your heart to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice. The Bible tells us how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. We must speak our minds openly, debate our disagreements honestly, but always pursue solidarity. When America is united, America is totally unstoppable. There should be no fear. We are protected, and we will always be protected. We will be protected by the great men and women of our military and law enforcement. And most importantly, we will be protected by God. Finally, we must think big and dream even bigger. In America, we understand that a nation is only living as long as it is striving. We will no longer accept politicians who are all talk and no action, constantly complaining but never doing anything about it. The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action. Do not allow anyone to tell you that it cannot be done. No challenge can match the heart and fight and spirit of America. We will not fail. Our country will thrive and prosper again. We stand at the birth of a new millennium, ready to unlock the mysteries of space, to free the earth from the miseries of disease, and to harness the energies, industries, and technologies of tomorrow. A new national pride will stir our souls, lift our sights, and heal our divisions. It's time to remember that old wisdom our soldiers will never forget, that whether we are black or brown or white, we all bleed the same red blood of patriots. We all enjoy the same glorious freedoms, and we all salute the same great American flag. And whether a child is born in the urban sprawl of Detroit or the windswept plains of Nebraska, they look up at the same night sky, they fill their heart with the same dreams, and they are infused with the breath of life by the same almighty Creator. So to all Americans in every city, near and far, small and large, from mountain to mountain, from ocean to ocean, hear these words: you will never be ignored again. Your voice, your hopes, and your dreams will define our American destiny. And your courage and goodness and love will forever guide us along the way. Together, we will make America strong again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you. God bless America.
You've just been listening there to President Donald J. Trump in his inauguration speech. Simon, strident there in his first remarks as the new U.S. president.
Well, Dawn, I think there were several things that were striking about that. First of all, if you remember the comments that Nigel Farage, the leader of the Leave campaign in the Brexit referendum, made immediately after his victory in Britain. He said, today is our Independence Day. I mean, you almost heard cadences of that speech in Donald Trump's inaugural address. This is the day the people become the rulers of this nation again. He excoriated the political establishment, as of course he did throughout the presidential campaign. And there were many cadences in this speech that were echoes of his campaign stump speech. The establishment, he said, protected itself but not the country's citizens. That, he suggested, is all going to end today. He talked of the importance of putting America first in terms of his policy going forward. He said we're going to buy American and hire American. He spoke of the importance of trying to unify this deeply divided and deeply polarized country. He called for the total allegiance to the United States of America, and he said through loyalty to the country, we will rediscover our loyalty to each other. He then went on to say there is no room for prejudice in the United States. When America is united, he asserted, it is unstoppable. And then he spoke about empty talk and no action. The time for empty talk, he said, is over. Now arrives the hour of action. Well, that's absolutely clear that for Donald Trump, this literally is the hour. He's now 20 minutes into his presidency, that inaugural address running about 16 minutes, 17 minutes by my clock. The question really, I think, that arises out of all of this is what kind of action lies ahead? Because we've seen over the last couple of weeks a pretty substantial gulf between Donald Trump and some of the men and women that he's selected to be in his own cabinet on some fairly key issues of policy. Donald Trump, for example, has described NATO as obsolete. His Defense Secretary James Mattis, by contrast, has said that it's the most important, effective military alliance in modern history, and the United States should deepen its engagement with NATO. That's one example of many where you can see a gulf rhetorically between Donald Trump and the men and women who will soon be surrounding him in that cabinet table. But absolutely no question whatsoever that this was a speech that reflected the populist winds that blew Donald Trump to power, blew him into Washington, D.C. here today, and blew him up to that point on Capitol Hill where he took the oath of office right on the stroke of noon in accordance with the U.S. Congress and became America's 45th president.
Will be peace.
All right, we're just going to return to our studio guest this evening. Harry, you heard Donald Trump's inauguration speech here, the content of it, and as Simon just referred to, those populist ideas that really, surged him to victory in last year's election. That protectionist ideology running very strongly through that speech.
Yeah, one thing that you have to give Trump credit for is that he absolutely knows his audience. He knows the fears and the hopes and the things that his audience wants, and he masterfully played to that, I think, in this inaugural speech.
Now, we also heard him really underline whatever he's said during the campaign trail, isn't it? And he sort of really, like you said, appealed to the American people, right down to the identity, the Christian identity of the Americans. Are those really promises that he can keep, though?
As of right now, I do think even President Donald Trump is learning as he goes along. In his mind, he may very well feel that he might be able to keep these promises. It's just impossible to really know what he expects himself to do, even for us to predict. So time will only tell.
So, Harry, in those first remarks as president, Donald Trump also talked about subsidizing the security of other countries, and he did talk about that in his election campaign as well. He made specific reference to it again in this speech. What do you make of those comments?
This is a debate that goes on between people who study this field of alliances and politics and things of that nature, and very smart people have taken the cause of both sides, and so he does have a point, depending on, of course, who you speak to. But I do think he is underselling the kind of benefits that the United States does receive from maintaining these alliances, even at a cost of our own money, as it were.
Right. We're going to return now to Washington and Tina Datta, the Singapore Country Director of Republicans Overseas, to get her views on Donald Trump's inauguration speech. Tina, you heard Donald Trump there speaking in his first remarks as president. Your thoughts?
Well, what I want to say, Harry, I do agree with you. He did stick to point. He did get right down into domestic policy, protecting the American worker, which is what he campaigned on. He talked about wanting American exceptionalism to continue to grow. One of the things I think that's important for everybody to know is it's not President Trump didn't just win the presidency. The Republican principles and the principles that he's espousing actually took over 33 governorships in the United States, 68 legislatures in the United States. So that basically means House and Senate for each state. So to put it clearly, 23 states in the United States are clean Republican states with House, legislature, and governor, and only 7 states in the United States are Democratic. And if you were to look at the map, those 7 states are on the coast of the West Coast and on the coast of the East Coast. So when Donald Trump is talking to the American people, he's genuinely talking to the core base of the United States. And that's why his message resonated. It's not just his election, it's actually the core principles of Republican platform and politics that won the day on Election Day, bringing Donald Trump to the presidency to carry that message forward.
Tina, in his inaugural address, he, I think, quite starkly started with, sorry about that, we are going to go live to the national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner, playing right now.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched was so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the and the home of the
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing while the President and official party depart the platform. You will be released by sections shortly.
A very beautiful rendition of the Star Spangled Banner. The national anthem, of course, sang by Jackie Evancho of America's Got Talent fame. Must be a very proud moment for Americans both at home and overseas. Tina, you're right there in Washington. What does this moment mean for you? And also, I want to talk about the unifying factors in Donald Trump's speech. He began actually by talking about rebuilding the country and restoring the promise of the country. Do you think that's a unifying factor?
I do think that message is a resonating message. It should resonate across party lines. The most important thing, I think, coming out of this speech was talking about no matter where you are an American first. And the policies and procedures that Donald Trump and the Republican administration and Republican state administrations across this great nation are going to put in place are going to be looking at to benefit every citizen of the United States. The arguing points that you saw within the campaign, and I really don't want to go back to all of that, but Democratic procedures are completely different in the way that they wanted to, that they manage their cities, the way that they put dependence on their, or support their, or lower the support on the people that live in Democratic cities. And I think what Donald Trump, having an understanding by traveling all over the United States, addressing inner city issues, addressing poverty, addressing jobs, addressing welfare, they have policies and procedures that they want to put in that will help everybody in the United States. Creating jobs, moving businesses back from, or having them establish factories here, or moving business back to the United States. Taking on, changing the tax code. which will allow companies that maybe have expanded in other countries in Asia or in Europe for production facilities to be able to bring that labor back to the United States. This is a time where there's going to be an administration that's going to look on a global scale what needs to be done to do the best they can to bring jobs and bring business back to the shores of the United States. And for the American people and the American worker here, that's his responsibility, and that's a job that he's going to take very seriously, as well as his administration. So while I live in Singapore, and I do love living there, living in Singapore, if I'm not living here in the United States, I would want to live nowhere else. The American people living and existing daily here in the United States, they need this to take place. They need to find hope, and they need their economy to be able to grow and look forward to building better lives for their families than what they've been able to do the last 20 years.
Harry, let's bring you back in on the conversation here. This, what we heard or what we thought of as rhetoric, what many people saw of it in Donald Trump's campaign today as president, he's speaking, very much in line with those thoughts that he had back then, which was to galvanize the American people, saying that the forgotten will no longer be forgotten, to really return America back to the people, as it were. It is a sentiment that has been going throughout the world as well, in a sense. I mean, if you go back to Brexit and what happened there, is this something? Is it just something that we're seeing in America, or is this something that is resonating globally?
It certainly is something that's resonating globally. We see it happening, the growth of right-wing movements, political movements. We've seen it in Austria. We've seen it in Germany to a certain extent. We've obviously seen it with Brexit. France is dealing with their own elections very, very soon. So this is definitely something that you would call a trend.
Now, with President Trump officially sworn in, his administration starts now. And with his administration, we have seen his cabinet picks begin their Senate confirmation hearings. What do you make of his selection so far?
I do think some of it is returning political favors. Some of it are people that he believes, that he feels would carry out his vision for America. But there are obvious conflicts with that. A lot of, even within his own camp, there have been a lot of fighting, political infighting over who should fill these important positions. And we definitely have resistance from definitely the Democrat side. So it will be a contentious fight, and time will only tell.
And even among those cabinet picks, some of them seem to detract from what Mr. Trump stands for.
Absolutely. There have been, as it was mentioned earlier, that Secretary of Defense Mattis, assuming that he passes his hearing, has taken stances that are contrary to what President Trump has said. There are obvious disagreements over the status of Russia and what they mean to the United States. So there are some clear divisions there.
All right, let's check back in with our U.S. Bureau Chief, Simon Marks, who's in Washington right now. Simon.
So, Dawn, this has been a day of transition here in Washington, D.C., and we're witnessing right now another transition. Everybody transitioning away from the formal inauguration of Donald Trump, who is now 33.5 minutes into his presidency and towards the next act here. And there are a couple of different variations on that. We're going to see very shortly Barack Obama climb aboard a helicopter for what is described as the official departure ceremony. He's flying out, not on the helicopter, obviously, beginning on a plane after that. He's flying out to Palm Springs in California, on the other side of the country, in the California desert. It's a place that he and his family have visited several times during the course of his presidency. You may remember that it is where he took ASEAN leaders for the Sunnylands Summit a few months ago. It's part of the country that he enjoys, and he will be heading there as a private citizen to engage in a little rest and relaxation before unusually for a former president of the United States, returning to Washington, D.C., because the Obama family has bought a home in the Kalorama district of Washington, D.C. They will be rubbing shoulders with Ivanka Trump and her husband Jared Kushner. He's going to be playing a prominent role in the new White House because they too have bought a home in that neighborhood. And as we were saying a bit earlier on the broadcast, Barack Obama has made it clear that he is now returning to life as a private citizen, but he firmly believes that as a private citizen, he has a right to speak his mind. And he said at his closing news conference, where he sees Donald Trump threatening core American values, he will not hesitate to speak out. That also speaks to something of a leadership vacuum within the Democratic Party as well in the aftermath of Hillary Clinton's defeat at the hands of Donald Trump. There they go, Donald Trump and Barack Obama heading out for that formal departure ceremony that will see Barack Obama climb onto a helicopter. This will be the first time that he makes a journey by air for 8 years in an aircraft that does not have the call sign either Marine One or Air Force One. And that's a moment for Barack Obama to contemplate as he gets aboard that helicopter and prepares to head out of here. After he's gone, Donald Trump heads back inside the building for the inauguration lunch, which of course will be attended by members of the Senate and the House of Representatives alike, Democrats and Republicans. So the ceremony continues. This tapestry of pomp and circumstance continues up on Capitol Hill with that lunch. And then a little bit later in the afternoon here in Washington, D.C., as you all head towards dawn, Singapore, Hong Kong time, we'll see the parade that takes Donald Trump to the White House. We'll have to see how the weather holds up for that. We're all interested to see if at any point he gets out of the car and walks down Constitution or Pennsylvania avenues on his way towards the White House, as would be in keeping with tradition, waving at the crowds of supporters that have gathered alongside those streets to watch him and Melania Trump as they head towards the White House. So we wait for Barack Obama to make his formal departure from Washington, D.C., the final act in his political career, capping 8 years in office. That's, of course, 2 terms as an American president, the most anybody can serve, 2 consecutive terms within the confines of the Constitution, and it will be quite a moment when we see Barack Obama clamber aboard that helicopter and fly out of here. And he's being escorted out of the Capitol building by the man who will succeed him as president, has now succeeded him as president 37 minutes ago. We're going to have to get used to calling him now President Trump, because the Trump era is underway. And you can see Mike Pence and Joe Biden just behind them there, also striding down the stairs, an honor guard standing on those stairs, seeing Barack Obama off. Barack Obama has engaged in numerous conversations with Donald Trump since his election victory. He's described them all as cordial. He says that he has urged Donald Trump to listen to his advisors. Barack Obama believes that the greatest lesson that he learnt as President of the United States was knowing what he didn't know and making sure that he listened to what his advisors were telling him. When Donald Trump, by the way, gets into the Oval Office a little bit later today and he sits down behind that desk, he'll find, we think, almost certainly, assuming tradition has been kept, a note within it that will have been left for him by Barack Obama. A hug there for Joe Biden and Jill Biden as the Obamas prepare to part company with the vice president, the former vice president now, and his wife. Be very interesting to see what that note from Barack Obama to Donald Trump contains. The Bidens and the Pences are going to make their way down the stairs, and we'll see the formal departure of the Bidens. I believe Joe Biden is planning to do what he always likes to do, which is to head to the railway station here in Washington, D.C., Union Station, right by the U.S. Capitol. Capitol and get on a train that will take him home to Wilmington in Delaware. He used to pride himself when he was a member of the Senate of always leaving on a Friday and getting on the train and heading back to Wilmington in Delaware, and then he'd get on the train on a Monday morning and come back to Washington, D.C. He's a big fan of Amtrak, America's railroad, and he will be using that to depart Washington, D.C. As I was saying, it'll be very interesting to see what's in that note from Barack Obama to Donald Trump. Barack Obama was very touched by the note that he received from George W. Bush when he first moved into the White House. And former President Obama has said throughout this process that he wanted to model the transition. And it's obviously an intensely difficult and complicated experience for Democrats who have been in that White House for 8 years, and many of whom were absolutely sure Democrats were going to stay in that White House at least for another 4 years. It has to be an emotionally wrenching experience to hand power over to people against whom you are ranged politically. But Barack Obama said that he wanted to model the transition on the way in which George W. Bush had handled the transition from his presidency to the Obama era. He felt very affected and touched by the bipartisan way in which George W. Bush had handled that transition. And that's how he has sought, he says, to model this particular handover, within the context of President Obama saying he will not hesitate, if necessary, to speak out about some of the things that Donald Trump may do in the weeks and months ahead. But all that is in the weeks and months ahead. This is a day of ceremony and tapestry on Capitol Hill, and important for everybody outside the United States to remember that we are not simply seeing the transition of one head of government to another, we're seeing the transition of one head of state to another as well. And that's why this is such a great state occasion. It obviously has enormous political context as well, but over and above that, this is a state occasion and a state ceremony. Barack Obama and Michelle Obama now being led to the steps of that military helicopter that will take them out of Washington one last time, at least one last time for now, because, as I said, they'll be moving back into Washington in a few days' time. A hand on the shoulder there from Donald Trump. Everything between these two couples has been extremely warm all day long here, extremely cordial. Melania Trump saying goodbye, a kiss on the cheek there for Barack Obama, a kiss on the cheek for Michelle Obama from Donald Trump, who whispers something into her ear, another whisper into her ear as well. Oh, to be close and to know exactly what they were saying to one another. Perhaps a little bit later on we may find out. And they head up the stairs, and we'll see that one last salute, I would imagine, from Barack Obama. The wave, maybe not a salute, a wave. And he'll get aboard that helicopter and prepare to fly out of the US Capitol.
All right, and with that, the curtains come down on the Obama administration, and an exciting period awaits us with the newly sworn-in President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, now ascending the stairs of Capitol Hill. He has more pomp and ceremony awaiting him for the rest of the day, and we are going for a short break now. When we come back, more from the inauguration ceremony.
the rooster years surprise you with an abundance of joy.
This Saturday, they run a hedge fund together. Does being husband and wife help them make better investment decisions?
I think it actually helps because I can read him like a book.
That you're a team with a common goal.
And has India's demonetization move backfired?
Very bold, audacious, unprecedented, historic thing.
Plus, the high cost of being shackled by household chores. Money Mind, Saturday, 10:30 p.m.
Money Mind is brought to you by Subaru. Symmetrical all-wheel drive. Make sense of the day's business events.
It's time for business news.
Track crucial trades. And understand the impact on tomorrow's economy.
Local firms are still contending on how business will be affected.
Singapore Tonight. Business. Weeknights at 10 p.m. on Channel News Asia. This is brought to you by UOB.
Welcome back to our special coverage of the U.S. presidential inauguration. New York billionaire Donald Trump has been inaugurated as the 45th president of the United States of America, and he has promised to return power from Washington back to the people and to put America first.
We are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
Mr. President.
70-year-old is the oldest U.S. president to be sworn in for the first time. And Mr. Mike Pence was also sworn in as vice president. About 900,000 people are in Washington for this event. Now, that's about half the number that attended the first inauguration of President Barack Obama back in 2009. Mr. Obama was at the ceremony earlier, along with other former presidents, including Bill Clinton.
Also there was Mrs. Hillary Clinton, who lost to Mr. Trump, if you recall, in the divisive presidential elections last year.
Now, local authorities allowed demonstrations by 30 groups, both for and against Mr. Trump in Washington today. The clashes did break out between police and one of those groups. Local reports say the protesters threw rocks and broke windows at the Bank of America branch in the U.S. Capitol. Now, police fired tear gas to disperse them.
Now, it's not known what side the protesters were from, and it's one of many demonstrations being staged in the Capitol and around the U.S. against the new president.
And meanwhile, world leaders have sent congratulatory messages to Donald Trump on his inauguration as U.S. president. And among the first was Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Posting on his official Twitter account, Mr. Netanyahu offered congratulations to his friend. He added that he looks forward to working closely with Mr. Trump to strengthen the alliance between their two countries.
Now, Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko also tweeted a message to the new U.S. president, congratulating him and wishing Mr. Trump success in fulfilling what he calls noble goals of leading the free world.
Now, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi also tweeting his well wishes. Referring to the US President's Twitter handle, Mr. Modi said, "Congratulations at real Donald Trump on assuming office as US President. Best wishes in leading the USA to greater achievements in the coming years."
Now, Mr. Modi went on to say the strength of the India-USA strategic partnership lies in our shared values and common interests. Looking forward to working with President @Real Donald Trump.
President Barack Obama tweeted for the first time on the official POTUS Twitter account 2 hours before the oath-taking at the Capitol. His last tweet reads, and I quote, "It's been the honor of my life to serve you. You made me a better leader and a better man. I won't stop. I'll be right there with you as a citizen, inspired by your voices of truth and justice, good humor and love." Now, the POTUS account has since been changed to President Trump.
Also a witness to Mr. Trump's oath-taking was his rival in the November presidential elections, Hillary Clinton. Mrs. Clinton tweeted a message of her own with the hashtag Inauguration. She said, "I'm here today to honor our democracy and its enduring values. I will never stop believing in our country and its future."
Singapore's President Tony Tan Keng Yam and Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, they've written congratulatory letters to the new President of the United States, Donald Trump.
Now, in his letter, President Tan congratulated Mr. Trump on his inauguration and reflected on how both countries have enjoyed a close military and economic partnership with good people-to-people ties. He also said he hopes both countries will be able to broaden and deepen their bilateral relationship.
In his letter, Prime Minister Lee said Mr. Trump had, and I quote, "assembled a strong team and was confident he would be able to implement his vision of a stronger and more prosperous America." He added that both Singapore and the United States enjoyed extensive economic and business ties, citing the US-Singapore Free Trade Agreement as a remarkable success. He also expressed hope that both countries will continue to build excellent security ties to tackle global threats like terrorism.
Well, let's get a quick check on how Mr. Trump's inauguration speech is being viewed by investors. We're joined by Nick Harper live from New York. Nick, give us a sense of how the markets are responding.
Well, there was certainly lots of anticipation in the markets ahead of Donald Trump's speech. Investors waiting to see about what he may say in terms of economic news. Going into the speech, the markets were doing fairly well, up by about 0.5%, but they did drop slightly during the course of the speech. Not dramatically, about 0.2% lower, still remaining in positive territory. Now, Donald Trump's speech was very much a protectionist, nationalist speech in which he talked about things that he wanted to do in terms of the economy to protect American jobs. He said from this day forward, it's only going to be America first, and they would follow two simple rules: to buy American and to hire American. Investors were waiting to see if he said anything about the potential increased government spending, renewing the infrastructure that he promised during the campaign. He said that he would be doing that. He said they would build new roads, highways, bridges, airports, tunnels, and railways. Of course, there has been a big post-election boost on Wall Street, the thought that he will be able to spend a lot of government money on that infrastructure program, promising to bring jobs back to America. No words on corporate tax cuts. And in terms of trade deals, he said that every decision on trade and taxes would be made for the benefit of American workers at families. So a couple of moments ago, the Dow was up by about 0.2%. The S&P in the same territory up by 0.2%, as was the Nasdaq, also up by 0.2%. So the market's still up, but did dip slightly during the course of Donald Trump's speech.
All right, thanks, Nick. That was Nick Harper with this hour's, well, he was giving us the reaction there on Wall Street to news of the inauguration of President Donald Trump. Now, let's go back to our guest, Tina Datta. She's also in Washington. Tina, you know, the world is going to be keen to see now exactly how President Trump's administration takes shape, especially in regards to security issues, trade issues, as well as domestic policy as well. So do you foresee any of President Trump's cabinet nominations so far, you know, sort of falling through at all? Is there speculation about that? Do you think they're all going to be pushed through?
I think that there's a good chance that we will see the cabinet completely confirmed by next week. There hasn't been, I've been in Washington, D.C. now for a couple of days, and while there has been a bit of noise back and forth and some senators maybe wanting something until they put their votes down on the table. There's no loud noise regarding anything having to do with ethics or otherwise with any of the appointees. And so the confirmation process will probably go through by next week, Monday, Tuesday, and he'll have his full cabinet in place.
Now, Tina, Trump differs on a surprising number of important issues with some of the people he's tapped. James Mattis and Mike Pompeo broke with him on NATO, the Iran nuclear deal, and other major policies. What are we to make of that?
I think what to make of all of that is that, this is the first week where everybody's sort of come together, where these discussion points have been open for public discussion. And I think after the first cabinet meeting, once they've been officially sworn in, policies and procedures and talking points on each one of those subjects will be discussed and probably agreed upon. And I think if we go back and look in about a week from now or 10 days, we'll have clearer guidance as to whether there's actual conflict that was discussed earlier or there's not. Donald Trump, there is that position, and Harry, you did a very good job of saying this. There is both sides of the issue when it comes to military expenditures on behalf of the United States that have taken place over the last 20 to 30 years, having to do with defense of other countries, and then what's gone on with our own military and the defunding of our military here due to sequestration and budget issues in the United States. So these are major issues that will be addressed, my take, probably within the next 90 days. And while I don't think it's going to be extreme on either side, I do think there's going to be a unified decision that comes out of it. And as I said, I think we just need to give it 90 days for us to have a clear understanding as to how the policies that have been discussed and how the new leaders in those cabinet positions, when they're in, how the synergy comes together and what those policies and procedures are going to mean for us going forward.
All right, Tina, we'll come back to you in a bit, but right now we're looking at live pictures where people are breaking for lunch on Capitol Hill. In just a few moments as well, Donald Trump, in his first acts as U.S. president, is expected to sign several executive orders. Some of these executive actions can, of course, be implemented without the authority of Congress. New White House Secretary Sean Spicer says Trump is committed to enacting an agenda of real change, and he's expected to formally withdraw from the TPP, or at least there's talk of that happening. There's also talk that he will renegotiate the NAFTA, that's the North American Free Trade Agreements with Mexico and Canada as well.
Let's come back to our studio guest here today with us, Harry. Harry, we're waiting for just in a few moments' time President Donald Trump. He's going to make his first executive orders in the president's room. What do you anticipate we'll see? Is he going to sort of, set the direction here in these first few moments as new president?
Yes. I think the first big move that he will make is obviously the Affordable Care Act, along with the TPPs. I mean, these are major kinds of targets that Trump has focused on during his campaign. It's the biggest target, so it's easy for him to go after, and it fulfills Republican agendas in some way, while renegotiating free trade agreements definitely will not sit right with some Republican lawmakers, but it is something that he has promised, so he will do his best to deliver.
Right, we're now getting some pictures of a live feed rather of the U.S. President Donald J. Trump's Twitter page, and he's tweeted a couple of tweets in the past couple of minutes. In the first one, he says, "The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. From this moment on, it's going to be America first." That sort of just reinforces his message during his inaugural speech a little earlier on.
He's also written there that, he's got one tweet there. "What truly matters," he says, "is not which party controls our government, but whether our government is controlled by the people." The messages here on Twitter seeming to reflect very much his inauguration speech about giving power back to the people, the American people, on Inauguration Day. We're going back to live pictures now, where guests from the inauguration ceremony are gathering. Let's go to our US Bureau Chief Simon Marks now for more. Simon.
So, Dawn, we're waiting to see Donald Trump arrive in Statuary Hall up there on Capitol Hill, part of the process of heading towards that lunch with members from both houses of Congress. I want to talk a little bit more about what's happened on Twitter in the last few minutes, because it is interesting. Donald Trump, on the Donald Trump Twitter handle, Real Donald Trump, has been tweeting again. Now, my suspicion is that it's not actually Donald Trump who's spending time sitting there using his thumbs to tweet away. Almost certainly his account, as it was on occasion during the course of the campaign, has been put in the hands of his social media guru, Brad Parscale, who really was in every way a key part of the designer of Donald Trump's social media presidential campaign, which largely was responsible for helping to fuel his rise to the White House. But there are several tweets that have gone out as Real Donald Trump, summating essentially what he said during the course of that inaugural address. Today, we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C. and giving it back to you, the American people. It goes on to reiterate many of the cadences that he used in that speech. We will follow two simple rules: buy American and hire American. We will bring back our jobs, our borders, our wealth and our dreams. What's interesting is not just what he's saying in those tweets, but the fact that he's using the Real Donald Trump handle still, as opposed to the presidential Twitter handle, which, as you noted, Dawn, has now been officially transferred over to him. Barack Obama now arriving at the Air Force Base, from where he will make his journey to Palm Springs in California. Tina was reminding me that Palm Springs is home to more than 20 golf courses. Barack Obama, no stranger to the golf course, it is fair to say. And doubtless he will be exercising his swing over the course of the next few days, provided the weather cooperates. His staff said that he wanted to get out of Washington and go somewhere warmer. I haven't checked the weather forecast for Palm Springs today, but when they said that, it was only about 3 degrees warmer in Palm Springs than it was here in an unseasonably mild Washington winter. So he may not find himself getting much warmer than he was at the White House last night, saying goodbye to the Oval Office, but he is saying goodbye to Washington and heading off to Palm Springs for that weekend break. But going back to the Twitter issue, you know, it's important because Donald Trump has used social media as an extraordinarily powerful tool. He believes that it is a tool that allows him to communicate directly to the American people in an unfiltered way, not having to run things through the White House press corps. As you know, there is considerable tension still between the White House Correspondents Association and Donald Trump's now presidential team about the future of things like the White House briefings, about the future arrangements that are going to exist in the White House briefing room. Will we see Sean Spicer standing in front of the podium every day at 12:30, as Josh Earnest has been doing for the last several years? Will a larger number of news organizations be allowed to access the White House on a daily basis? I can tell you that as a foreign correspondent of more than 20 years standing here in Washington, D.C., there are a number of foreign broadcasters that would welcome a far greater degree of access to the White House than we have all previously had. Will the power, though, of the representatives of the major broadcast networks here, ABC, CBS, NBC, the newspapers, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the news agencies, the Associated Press and Reuters, will that power become diluted under a Donald Trump presidency, because perhaps he will choose partly to communicate directly through that Twitter account, partly to communicate to news organizations that are less well known, but reflective of his own political outlook. The One American News Network, for example, a 24-hour news channel that reflects Donald Trump's political outlook. The conservative news website Newsmax, will their presence in that briefing room be accentuated? These are all questions that we can start thinking about next week once everything gets underway. Those documents that we know Donald Trump is going to sign, I'm not sure whether we're going to see him signing them on camera. It looks like we are. I think we are. We'll see. Donald Trump has described them as very meaningful documents. He said earlier in the week that he hadn't quite resolved the order of documents that he was going to sign, the sequencing of the documents, but we do know that at least one of them will terminate US involvement in TPP. Another will lead to the renegotiation, the requirement to renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. And several of the documents that he either signs today or over the weekend or on Monday will relate to the future of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, which of course President Trump has vowed to repeal and replace. Again on that issue, and it's an issue of vital importance, 20 million Americans rely on Obamacare for their health care coverage currently. There is a gulf between Donald Trump and Republican leaders up on Capitol Hill. He has spoken about simultaneously repealing and replacing Obamacare. Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and Mitch McConnell, the Republicans' leader in the US Senate, say, well, we can't do it all together at the same time. It's going to take months, if not years, to prepare a legislative packet of documents that would be required to replace it. So how that all works out over the course of the next few weeks is going to be a matter of some considerable interest and importance here in Washington, D.C. But, you know, the overriding message of Donald Trump preparing to sign all those documents and the overriding message of what we heard in his inaugural address and what we heard a little bit earlier in the week in some of the interviews that he gave to European newspapers is that this is a man impatient to get on with the job of governing. He wants to start delivering, he says, on the promises that he made to the people who sent him here. You heard that very, very clearly in his inaugural address. He's been consistent about it throughout the last several days as he's headed towards this transition. And once he starts signing those documents, we will truly be able to say that the Trump administration is in business and that the business of government is being done by America's new president. Michelle Obama and Barack Obama now arriving at Andrews Air Force Base just outside Washington, D.C. in Maryland for the second part of their formal departure ceremony. Almost certainly going to make some remarks and pay tribute to the military personnel who are at Andrews Air Force Base to oversee President Obama's formal departure to those golf courses in Palm Springs. But after 8 years in the White House, no doubt he'll be overjoyed finally to be on the golf course and know that reporters like me won't get to hear who he was playing with, because up until now, of course, every time he's gone to the golf course, we've all got this email from the pool of reporters that has followed him for the last 8 years telling us exactly how long he played for and who he was playing with. We never get his score, though, so I'm still unclear what his handicap is, but since it's not really my sport, perhaps that doesn't matter.
Are they looking at those pictures?
Please be seated.
Hello, everybody. You know, Michelle and I, we've really been milking this goodbye thing. So it behooves me to be very brief. Yes, yes. You know, I've said before, and I will say again, that when we started on this journey, we did so with an abiding faith in the American people and their ability, our ability, to join together and change the country in ways that would make life better for our kids and our grandkids. That change didn't happen from the top down, but it happened from the bottom up. It was met sometimes with skepticism and doubt. Some folks didn't think we could pull it off. There were those who felt that the institutions of power and privilege in this country were too deeply entrenched. And yet, all of you came together in small towns and big cities, a whole bunch of you really young, and you decided to believe. And you knocked on doors and you made phone calls and you talked to your parents who didn't know how to pronounce Barack Obama. And you got to know each other, and you went into communities that maybe you'd never even thought about visiting, and met people that on the surface seemed completely different than you, didn't look like you or talk like you or watch the same TV programs as you, and yet once you started talking to them, it turned out that you had something in common. And it grew, and it built. And people took notice. And throughout, it was infused with a sense of hope. And as I said in 2004, it wasn't blind optimism that drove you to do all this work. It wasn't naivete. It wasn't willful ignorance to all the challenges that America faces. It was hope in the face of difficulty, hope in the face of uncertainty. You proved the power of hope. And throughout this process, Michelle and I, we've just been your front men and women. We have been the face, sometimes the voice, out front on the TV screen or in front of the microphone, but this has never been about us. It has always been about you. And all the amazing things that happened over these last 10 years are really just a testament to you. In the same way that when we talk about our amazing military and our men and women in uniform, the military is not a thing. It's a group of committed patriots willing to sacrifice everything on our behalf. It works only because of the people in it. As cool as the hardware is, and we got cool hardware, as cool as the machines and weapons and satellites are, ultimately it comes down to remarkable people. Some of them a lot closer to Malia's age than mine or Michelle's. Well, the same thing's true for our democracy. Our democracy is not the buildings. It's not the monuments. It's you being willing to work to make things.
We're just cutting out of those pictures of President Obama making some closing remarks. We're now going to Simon Marks to talk about the executive actions that the new U.S. President Donald Trump is signing. You're seeing pictures right now. Simon, what can you tell us about those executive actions?
Well, Donald Trump is getting down to business. The business of government starts right now here in Washington, D.C. An hour and 14 minutes after he was sworn into the presidency. He is in a room up on the Capitol signing a series of executive documents. This, I think, is the second one that he's signed so far, flanked by some of the Republicans up in Congress that he will be working with, and some Democrats as well there. Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, his own son, Barron, looking over his shoulder and keeping an eye at the documents that he's signing. We don't know exactly what these executive orders are. We know that the Trump team has been carefully thinking about how to sequence the various executive orders that he wants to sign in order to take control of the US government in a formal way, and in order also to effect changes in policy. I'm sure we'll get a briefing from Sean Spicer, the presidential spokesman, about exactly what he's signing there in the not too distant future. You'll see that he's using a variety of different pens. That is by tradition. Whenever the President of the United States signs executive orders or signs laws onto the statute books, the pens are always highly sought after souvenirs, especially for those members of Congress or those members of his cabinet that have championed the various changes that he may be signing. We do know that one of the earliest acts that he was planning was to consign the Trans-Pacific Partnership to history and America's involvement therein. It may well be that one of those documents is what he's doing. He did joke a short while ago after signing one piece of paper that this is for Rex, presumably a reference to Rex Tillerson, who will soon become Donald Trump's Secretary of State, succeeding John Kerry at the State Department. But we can see there that he's engaging in a little small talk with some of the children who are flanking him as he signs all of those documents. Melania Trump right behind him in that striking blue dress. As soon as this process is over, they will be heading off to lunch with members of Congress. Quite a lot of laughter in the room. He seems very relaxed about this whole process. But this is a big moment because this is President Trump now acting as President of the United States. Nancy Pelosi, the Democrats' leader, is there. She's smiling too. So that may give you an indication of the comity that is currently being displayed up on Capitol Hill. Would that comity would last in this city? Let's take a listen to what he's saying.
You get a price back. That's good. You got a price back. I'll take them. Yeah. You would be very good. I'll take them. Put them back, Pencil. This is, you did very well yesterday. Rick Perry. Yes. Look, check this. Touring. It's better than Carson. Okay, who would like? I want Rick Perry. Good. Okay, you get them ready for me? It's a tough group of people we have. They're learning the hard way. Exactly. Betsy, education, right? Yes. Oh. I thought Chuck wanted one. Not that one, no, thank you. Is that a rough group? It is. I'm happy to tell formally various members of the cabinet. I think we're going to need some more pens, by the way. Labor. No. Don't you? Where's Kelly? Come on, Senator. I think the Senator he's going to do a good job.
He's very relaxed, as he has been throughout the day. You know, whatever you think of Donald Trump politically, wherever you stand politically, this is a man who is uniquely relaxed in front of cameras. His experience as a television personality, he has so much experience as a showman and so much experience as a businessman signing deals with people that this is obviously a very relaxed atmosphere in which he finds himself today. And he'll go from here to the lunch with Democrats and Republicans together as the pageantry continues up on Capitol Hill before the ultimate act of pageantry, the parade, where he will head from Capitol Hill to the White House to take up residence behind its walls. Still some considerable question as to just how much time Donald Trump will actually spend living in the White House. Melania and their son Barron will be returning to New York City to reside in Trump Tower. Donald Trump may find himself commuting back and forth between Washington, D.C. and New York City on an occasional or perhaps continuing basis. I think we'll have to see how that all works out over the course of the next few days. Ivanka Trump, though, his daughter, definitely moving here to Washington. You can see her standing behind Donald Trump, carrying the baby there. That's Ivanka Trump, whose husband, Jared Kushner, is going to be playing a role. You can see him standing immediately next to Ivanka Trump and just behind Mike Pence. That's Jared Kushner, who is going to become a very big deal in this town, particularly in foreign policy terms. Throughout the transition, he has been something of a conduit to Donald Trump for various people internationally who have wanted to communicate with, as he then was, the president-elect. Lots of discussions ongoing about the pens.
That's right, a seemingly endless stream of presidential pens being given out there in the president's room today. Thank you very much, Simon Marks, for that. We've been speaking there to Simon Marks, who's in Washington. All right, we're going to go for a break now, but stay with us for our continuing coverage of the U.S. presidential inauguration.
It's going to be helping World War.
All of a sudden, I see very massive flame coming over me.
That was when the screams started.
เพื่อนที่เรารักก็เห็นตายมาหลายคนเนี่ย
Akala ko yun na yung buhay ko habang buhay. At akala ko yun doon matatapos lahat.
သူတို့နေဆက်တဲ့ကနေမခံနိုင်အောင်တစ်ခုစုံလေးကကိုယ်တက်တည်လိုက်တာကောင်းမယ်။ဘာကကိုနားစားကို
Yes, you know, when your survival instincts kicked in, you just run. Minsan hindi mo na alam kung hanggang saan yung kaya mong gawin para magtiis ang
Home is not just one place,
but a collection of memories in many places.
It's where conversations create connections.
And where seasons change, but not a moment is wasted.
Because it's where we live.
And the Ascot lifestyle we have come to love.
Ascot is where we want to be.
The all-new Between the Lines. Is Southeast Asia ready for nuclear power?
I think the technology is there, but I think that maybe the people have not been able to explain to the public always in a very convincing way.
The lesson from Fukushima is that so-called safety myth. The risk is always relative, and the public needs to understand we cannot eliminate the risk eventually.
Between the Lines, Wednesday at 6 and 11 p.m. on Channel News Asia.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. And New York billionaire Donald Trump has been inaugurated as the 45th President of the United States of America. And he's promised to restore power to the people and to put America first.
We are transferring power from Washington, D.C. and giving it back to you, the people. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again.
Now, he also sought to send out a message of unity after an election campaign that divided Americans.
It's time to remember that old wisdom our soldiers will never forget, that whether we are black or brown or white, we all bleed the same red blood of patriots.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
Mr. President.
The 70-year-old is the oldest U.S. president to be sworn in for the first time. Mr. Mike Pence was also sworn in as vice president. About 900,000 people are in Washington for this event, and that's about half the number that attended the first inauguration of President Barack Obama back in 2009. Now, Mr. Obama was at the ceremony earlier, along with other former presidents, including Bill Clinton. Also there, Mrs. Hillary Clinton, who lost to Mr. Trump in last year's presidential elections.
Local authorities allowed demonstrations by 30 groups, both for and against Mr. Trump in Washington today. Now, clashes broke out between police and one of those groups. Local reports say the protesters threw rocks and broke windows at the Bank of America branch in the U.S. Capitol. Police fired tear gas to disperse them. It's not known what side the protesters were from. It's one of many demonstrations being staged in the Capitol and around the U.S. against the new president.
Now, Harry, in his speech earlier, Donald Trump did talk about friendship with other countries. I mean, and that was despite the fact that the inauguration speech really weighed very heavily on populism. But is it going to be enough for those countries to look forward now at his presidency and say it's going to be something other than just business as usual?
Frankly speaking, I don't think it will be enough. U.S. commitment, especially to this region, has always been questioned and always been suspect. Even at the height of the pivot, a lot of countries have been doubting American commitment to the region. And so with Trump's rhetoric thus far, he has done a lot to damage the confidence of nations in the region in American engagement. And so I think he will have to, if he really means his rhetoric, he will have to show through action in some ways. Yes.
Oh, well, it remains to be seen.
Harry, thank you so much for joining us on the show. It's been great having you with us for the last 2.5 hours and witnessing history unfold, as it were. We've been speaking with Harry Sa. He's research analyst at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at the Nanyang Technological University. And with that, we've just finished our special coverage of the inauguration of the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump.
We're going to leave you now with the highlights from the ceremony.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the brave and the home of the brave?
In the premiering episode of Bridging Giants, stories of friendship between the people of Cambodia and China, built in the fields of agriculture and through the restoration of a sacred site, on Bridging Giants, Saturday at 9:30 p.m. on Channel News Asia.
Next on First Look Asia, Chinese New Year is as much about family as it is about food, but too much of a delicious thing can be harmful. We'll show you how to have your cookies and eat them all without hurting your health. And slightly more than a week away from the Year of the Rooster. Well before it crows, we'll be exploring Singapore's Chinatown to pick out what's in store for this year's celebrations. Plus, all the latest in the international, business and sports news. Start your week with us on First Look Asia, Monday.
Channel News News Asia is available in Fairmont hotels and resorts across Asia.
Every Chinese New Year, it's in with the new and out with the old.
This is 1 ton of textile waste.
But by clearing up, have we created a bigger mess?
It's a toxic gas that we're breathing right now?
Yes. What really happens to your trash? I'm Jason Godfrey, and I'm going to find out. Trash Trail premieres 30 January, 8 p.m. on Channel News Asia.
The world's biggest toy company, fighting for its survival.
The company was bleeding cash.
Everybody was scared every time we were told there would be layoffs.
We had lost the plot, we had lost our identity.
How did one man's vision save Lego?
This is not a rich company. This is a company that's trying to survive.
Inside the Storm, back from the brink, Wednesday at 8 p.m. exclusively on Channel News Asia.
We are going to make America greater, greater, greater than it's ever been before.